Recently, several videos about Chinese traffic officers issuing unfair fines have circulated online. On June 24th, a food delivery worker in Haikou, Guangzhou, was stopped by a traffic officer for an unknown reason. The delivery worker broke down and shouted,
"I'm going to be late. If I'm late, I'm done for."
Netizens believe that this behavior by traffic officers directly harms delivery workers, who are at the bottom of the logistics chain and face multiple pressures from the platform, customers, and time constraints. Getting their vehicles confiscated or fined not only affects their income for the day, but can also lower their ratings on the platform and even result in a loss of wages. On June 25th, a man noticed two shared electric scooters parked on the roadside, with a traffic officer issuing fines. Wondering why fines were being issued for shared scooters, the man approached the officer and filmed the interaction.
Can you explain why you're issuing this fine? Are you involved? No. If you're not involved, then move along. Give me an explanation. What does this fine mean? These scooters are legal on the road, right? These aren't your scooters. That doesn't matter. I have the right to oversee your law enforcement. I'll tell you, these scooters don't have plates, so they can't be on the road. Do you see that? No plates? Then why are they in operation? For questions about why they're in operation, go to the traffic bureau. You can record me, but I hope you'll move along, okay? Or ask our leader. You always target ordinary people.
The man then turned to the two individuals who had been fined and said, "You can complain about him. These scooters are legal on the road." Unexpectedly, the traffic officer walked over and ordered the man filming to show him his ID. In Shandong, a car owner was stopped by a traffic officer after buying watermelons and vegetables and placing them in his trunk. Confused, he thought, "I've been following all the rules. I didn't run any red lights or speed, so why am I being stopped?" The officer explained, "Private cars are not for carrying goods. Your trunk is overloaded, which looks dangerous. We're being strict for everyone's safety. You'll have to pay a 200 yuan fine this time." People are outraged, saying that in China, it seems everything costs money except for sunshine and air. Such unreasonable fines are common, with many regions using fines as a way to generate income. On June 27, 2024, a traffic officer issued fines to a motorcyclist stating 2,000 yuan for carrying a passenger, 2,000 yuan for carrying goods, 2,000 for using the wrong lane, and 1,000 yuan for exceeding the speed limit. Mr. Liu from Hebei revealed that regardless of whether you ride a bicycle, an electric scooter, or drive a car, they find ways to fine you. Besides taxes, these fines have become rampant, with authorities thinking of various ways to impose them. In recent years, China has installed numerous surveillance cameras across the country, not only to monitor citizens, but as a fining tool. The Shenyang-Haikou Expressway is known for generating significant revenue from these cameras, with insiders saying that a few cameras can bring in about 100 million yuan a year. Mr. Yang from Henan mentioned that non-tax revenue, including traffic fines, has reached over 40%. Each person is monitored by at least 3 cameras, which are used to track and find drivers. Around June 13, 2024, a story went viral online from Hebei, detailing a woman being fined 100,000 yuan and sentenced to 2 years in prison for drilling a well to irrigate her land. This incident sparked widespread attention and debate. Many people were shocked, asking, "Is drilling a well illegal now? What's going on?" According to local Chinese media, the woman drilled a well on her land to water her crops without obtaining the necessary permits. The authorities claimed this was illegal groundwater extraction, violating local water resource management regulations and potentially harming the underground water environment. As a result, she was heavily fined and given a 2-year prison sentence. This incident quickly spread online, with many netizens expressing their disbelief and criticism, arguing that the punishment was too severe for a farmer trying to make a living. In January 2023, Mr. Wang was driving a bus filled with passengers during the Chinese New Year. The scenery was beautiful, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. However, when they reached the Jingyue Bridge on the Jianli Expressway, they were stopped by a staff member. Upon inspection, the staff found that some passengers had brought cabbages and other vegetables in their luggage. The staff considered these vegetables as goods and cited a law that forbids mixing passengers with cargo. As a result, Mr. Wang was 200 yuan, about $28. After several unsuccessful attempts to explain, Mr. Wang realized that the passengers were in a hurry and couldn't afford more delays. To avoid further issues, he reluctantly paid the fine and resumed the journey. Mr. Wang felt very aggrieved and shared the incident online, which quickly drew widespread attention. Many netizens did not understand the fine, arguing that the cabbages were just food for the passengers and not cargo. Ironically, on July 1st, a viral video showed a traffic officer in Liaoyuan, Jilin, riding a seized electric scooter on the street. Netizens, recalling the cabbage fine incident, sarcastically asked if this counted as mixing people and cargo. This incident also reminded people of the 2023 news from Yibin, Sichuan, where an air cleaning shop was fined 220,000 yuan, about $30,000, for allegedly practicing medicine illegally, despite only earning 500 yuan, about $69, from the service. According to previous reports, Li Jiaying, a vegetable seller, invested in an air care franchise to increase her family's income. Shortly after opening, local health enforcement officers visited her shop. In June 2023, the Yibin County Cuiping District Health Bureau determined that Li's shop was operating without a medical license and issued a fine of 110,000 yuan, about $15,000. Unable to pay the fine on time, Li faced an additional 110,000 yuan fine, totaling 220,000 yuan. Li Jiaying's lawyer argued that the Cuiping District Health Bureau abused its discretionary power, leading to an excessively harsh penalty. The lawyer noted that among 38 similar administrative penalty decisions he reviewed, only the District Health Bureau imposed such a high fine. Other local health bureaus usually imposed fines that were 5 times the illegal income if it didn't exceed 100,000 yuan. The lawyer emphasized that according to the administrative punishment law's principles of no penalty for first minor offenses and proportionality, Li Jiaying should have been informed in order to correct her actions rather than being subjected to such a devastating fine. Coincidentally, around the same time that the ear cleaning shop was fined, the Cuiping District Health Bureau was exposed for another exorbitant fine case. In March 2023, Mr. Wang, the owner of a therapy shop, treated a customer using acupuncture and cupping, charging 128 yuan, about $17.60. However, the Cuiping District Health Bureau deemed this an unauthorized medical practice. Consequently, Mr. Wang was fined 50,000 yuan, about $6,900. Since he couldn't pay the fine on time, an additional 50,000 yuan was imposed, totaling 100,000 yuan, about $14,000. Eventually, the Cuiping District Court ordered the enforcement of the penalty, confiscating Mr. Wang's earnings of 128 yuan and imposing the full fine of 100,000 yuan. Currently, Mr. Wang is still appealing. He expressed his frustration, explaining that after working and learning skills in a large city's therapy shop, he returned to Yibin to open his own business, only to face this massive fine. His therapy shop had to close, and he now relies on odd jobs to make a living. After such incidents, people can't help but wonder why these enforcement agencies are so keen on imposing such exorbitant fines on ordinary people. After all, what might seem like a simple fine to these agencies can be an unbearable burden for a regular person. Experts believe that behind the arbitrary fines and fees lies a government struggling with financial difficulties. In recent years, the Chinese government has faced fiscal challenges and tight budgets, repeatedly urging local governments to implement austerity measures. Recently, it has openly acknowledged that getting used to hard days is not a temporary need but a long-term strategy. However, for local governments in financial distress, even implementing austerity measures might not resolve the mismatch between revenue and expenditures. Consequently, various regions have resorted to increasing or even arbitrarily imposing fines to make up for budget shortfalls. At the second session of the 14th National People's Congress of China this year, the Ministry of Finance presented a report which included data on fine and forfeiture revenues from 16 provinces for 2023 and their revenue projections for 2024. Overall, there was significant variation in the scale of fine and forfeiture revenues among the 16 provinces. Guangdong had the highest fine and forfeiture revenue at about 33.8 billion yuan, while Ningxia had the lowest at 1.26 billion yuan, with the former being approximately 27 times the latter. Among the 111 cities that reported data, 80 showed an increase in fine and forfeiture revenues, accounting for over 72%. The most notable case was Qingdao. In 2021, fine and forfeiture revenue was 4.4 billion yuan, the highest among the 111 cities. Compared to 2020, Qingdao's revenue from fines and forfeitures increased by 127%. In summary, according to official Chinese data, fine and forfeiture revenues have been rising annually. Except for the initial outbreak of the pandemic in 2020, by 2021, this revenue grew at a rate of 19.2%, reaching over 370 billion yuan. far exceeding related tax revenues such as vehicle purchase tax and customs duties, and accounting for about 1.8% of the country's total revenue. Commentator Tang Jingyuan analyzed that the phenomenon of issuing excessive fines across regions is not accidental. China is facing a severe economic crisis, with frequent collapses in real estate and financial institutions, and local governments are burdened with massive debts, often resulting in delayed salaries. In this dire economic context, squeezing the public for money has become one of the few ways to generate revenue. This reflects the Chinese government's loss of economic momentum, resorting to extorting money from the people. Another analyst mentioned that local governments are now adopting a strategy of using new debt to pay old debt. But the high risk of default and high loan interest rates make this approach unsustainable. When local governments face increasing economic difficulties, the interest on new debts becomes higher. Thus, the chaos of fine economy highlights the desperate attempts of local governments to resolve their debt crisis. Professor Zhang Hongyuan from the Chili University of Technology in Taiwan added that local governments, driven by financial pressures and the desire to perform, are compelled to show results. This intertwining of fiscal pressures and the officials' motivation for promotion suggests that the phenomenon of raising funds through creative fines is likely to increase. External analysis suggests that these arbitrary fines by local governments might also be an effort to maintain stability. As revealed in the report cited earlier by the Ministry of Finance, China's public security budget, also known as the Stability Maintenance Budget, was 227 billion yuan, about $31.3, a 1.4% increase, much lower than the 7.2% increase in military spending. This significant decrease in the growth rate of stability maintenance funds is closely related to reduced central government revenue. Mr. Zhang from Wuhan, who has been detained multiple times by the police for petitioning, note that the reduced Stability Maintenance Fund is related to the central government's reduced financial income. Now, local governments and street offices are required to allocate 20 to 40% of their revenue for stability maintenance. A former civil servant from Henan revealed that many local officials have not been paid since 2023, and police officers, the front line of stability maintenance, have had their salaries cut, severely affecting their morale. Commentator Li Ang told Radio Free Asia that the 1.4% increase in stability maintenance funds this year is due to China's economic downturn and reduced government tax revenue. Consequently, to address the shortage of stability maintenance funds, local governments and police often increase their revenue through fines. For example, police may stop vehicles under the guise of inspections, but actually aim to issue fines. Local governments may also implement policies to increase revenue, such as raising fees on businesses and individual vendors. Experts warn that if these practices continue, there will be strong backlash and worse consequences. Retired Shanghai University lecturer Gu Guoping commented that the central government is desperately grabbing money. With people's lives already impacted by strict COVID measures, reducing their income and making it difficult to pay mortgages and car loans, additional fines could drive them to extreme actions. Such revenue-generating fines are seen as self-destructive, failing to solve local financial problems while exacerbating public resentment. An anonymous commentator pointed out that during economic downturns, when tax revenue growth slows, non-tax revenue, particularly fines and forfeitures, often surges. Using these revenues as a significant source of fiscal growth has become an open secret. Imposing fines explicitly to generate revenue equates to fine-based administration, rather than lawful administration. Unlike stable and predictable tax revenues, fine revenues are highly variable, providing ample opportunities for corruption. Thus, the rise in fine revenues might also herald a resurgence of corruption. An online article further noted that local governments' fine impulse stems from a lack of money. However, targeting businesses and individuals whenever funds are short is short-sighted and harmful, potentially leading to a vicious cycle where fines cause a worsening business environment, businesses leave, and the tax base is further reduced, causing greater fiscal shortfall.